Sophie Cunningham didn't mince her words after this one, and she had every reason not to. The Fever just blew a winnable game, falling 88-84 to a Mystics team at the bottom of the standings. Indiana led by double digits, even had control at halftime, before Washington ripped off a 22-7 run that flipped everything. With playoff positioning on the line, the loss dropped the Fever to 7th place. And Cunningham's post-game fire? We'll get to her exact words and why they cut so deep when compared to Stephanie White's excuses. Indiana built a 13-point advantage during the second quarter, leading 40-27, and at that stage it looked like they were cruising. But almost instantly, Washington stormed back with a 22-7 run that erased the lead and silenced the building. The Mystics were suddenly executing with confidence, shooting 52% from the field and knocking down big threes, while Indiana's offense went stagnant. What should have been a decisive cushion turned into a vulnerable one-possession game in a matter of minutes. Playing for the pot guys. Here is the pot guy product on a backdoor pass, but Mitchell lost the handle. Sutton thought about the three-step, said, "Hole got a piece." Dulcet has been wide open all possession, splashes home a three, and we are level at 47. That swing wasn't fueled by some unstoppable star on the other side. It came from the Fever losing their grip. Crucial turnovers piled up, and the defensive breakdowns were constant. Indiana committed 21 fouls, which handed Washington 26 free throw attempts. Every careless giveaway or late rotation led to yet another trip to the line, and the deficit shrank play by play. The problem wasn't bad officiating, it was the scoreboard being hammered by mistakes Indiana had full control over. Adding to the frustration, the ones who made Indiana pay were Washington's all-star rookies. Sonia Citrin looked unshaken and poured in 21 points, while Kiki Iriafen muscled her way to 18 points and 12 rebounds, including several second-chance boards that completely swung momentum. Their production wasn't just empty stats. It was proof that when Indiana stopped dictating, even a team still searching for its identity could come in and take over. Sitting in 7th place with playoff hopes hinging on these must-win nights, letting a young duo dismantle your lead is about as costly as it gets. It's not as if Indiana didn't have individual performances to lean on, though. Aaliyah Boston was excellent inside, putting up 20 points and grabbing 9 rebounds, giving the kind of steady production that should anchor a victory. Kelsey Mitchell facilitated well in the first half. Sophie Cunningham delivered energy, and Lexi Hull brought defensive effort. The core players worked hard and didn't quit, which makes the outcome that much harder to swallow. The collapse wasn't driven by a lack of effort on the floor. It was the absence of direction that left those efforts wasted. The reality is simple. Indiana didn't lose this game because Washington was the better team. They lost it by giving away steady possessions, allowing the Mystics to dictate tempo, and never finding a counter once the tide started turning. That pattern has haunted the Fever all season, strong stretches evaporating into preventable collapses. Every time this group takes a step forward, careless mistakes and missed adjustments drag them back down. And unlike earlier stretches of the season, these late-game collapses matter more now with the playoff race tightening by the day. Which brings us to the pressing question. Why was there no plan to protect the lead once it started slipping? When the entire building could feel momentum turning, who was responsible for steadying things, making the right rotation, or offering a reliable counter? The answers point in one direction, and it's exactly where fans have turned their frustration. I think we over-dribbled at times. Our off-ball movement wasn't there. We did a lot of standing. It's almost like we gave the ball to Kelsey and just tried to watch her work. And that's not when we're at our best. I mean, yes, certainly we want to have the ball in our hands, but we've got to continue to get movement with and without the basketball. It was getting stuck. I mean, we want to play 0.5 to 1 second basketball, and we weren't. And it's got to get moving. And Stephanie White's coaching decisions are front and center after this loss. And no issue has drawn more anger than Chloe Bibby's complete absence from the floor. Bibby is hitting 42% from 3 this season, yet she logs 0 minutes in a game where spacing and perimeter shooting dried up completely. When pressed, White explained she sat Bibby because of defensive matchup concerns, specifically rebounding and coverage responsibilities she felt would be exposed against Washington's lineups. That is the coach's stated reasoning, but paired with how the actual game played out, Indiana giving up 26 free throws, surrendering wide-open threes, and watching Kiki Iriafen dominate the paint, the explanation doesn't ease frustration. Fans see a proven floor spacer sidelined while those defensive issues unfolded anyway, and they're left asking why a potential solution was left unused. White admitted afterward that Indiana's offense was getting stuck, saying too often possessions turned into giving Kelsey Mitchell the ball and watching her work against multiple defenders. That line, "it was getting stuck," has become the rallying symbol of the night, because it sums up exactly what fans saw in real time. When your system devolves into predictable isolation plays, the obvious counter is spacing the floor with shooters like Bibby. Instead, the Fever leaned more heavily on Mitchell, and the result was strain without support. It hurts. I think we had 8 turnovers for 13 points in the second half as well. So we didn't take care of it. The numbers tell the story. Mitchell finished 6 for 19 from the field, putting up 14 points with 9 assists. She created chances, but she was asked to shoulder far too much as both scorer and primary initiator. Several possessions late ended with her driving into congested lanes, taking contested shots, while shooters stood untouched on the perimeter. That usage isn't a knock on Mitchell's decision-making. She produced under heavy pressure, but it's hard to ignore how repetitive the sets became once Washington loaded the paint against her. And I think it was something like a 22-7 run the end of the second, beginning of the third quarter. And those are hard to recover from when you're waiting A time, really, but when you're missing pieces. And, we've got to make sure that we're sharper at times. We don't have the margin to have lulls within quarters, and then I believe they had something like 21 points from free throw line and turnovers of their 26 in the fourth. And, we control that defending without fouling. We control that taking care of the basketball, decision making at times, and some of it's, playing some people out of position, and some of it's just not being, valuing the basketball in the way that we need to value it, being a little sloppy with it. What gnaws at fans isn't just the result, but the sense that the Fever undercut their own strengths, a roster with solid shooting, veteran fight, and an anchor in Aaliyah Boston, because the rotations and sets clogged instead of freed those weapons. Washington didn't deliver knockout blows with superstar play. The Mystics were rewarded by Indiana's predictability and selective use of their personnel. That's why the criticism has landed not on effort but on strategy. The players threw themselves into the contest, exhausting every ounce just to stay within reach. The coaching decisions, on the other hand, are now being judged as a drag on momentum at a time when seeding tightens and every mistake is magnified. And that opens the contrast you can't ignore. While the rotations raised questions, the players themselves refused to let the night slip without a fight. Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, and Odyssey Sims all gave Indiana the kind of production and effort that normally wins these games. Boston led the way with 20 points and 9 rebounds, anchoring the Fever inside and forcing Washington to collapse every time she touched the ball. Mitchell worked as both scorer and playmaker, finishing with 14 points and 9 assists, numbers that don't reflect just how much of the offense she was asked to shoulder when possessions stalled. Cunningham chipped in 8 points, but her stat line went deeper, 6 assists and 3 steals, including the highlight moment where she picked off a pass and drilled a 3 on the other end. Sims, barely 2 games into her stint on a hardship deal, added 11 points while attacking defenders and providing the closest thing to a true point guard the roster has right now. The context matters here. This team isn't patching holes, it's playing without its backcourt foundation. Caitlin Clark is still sidelined, and both Sydney Colson and Erie McDonald went down with season-ending injuries in the same week. That left Indiana scrambling without reliable ball handlers, forcing the front office to sign players like Sims and Lambert just to stabilize the rotation. For a roster suddenly stripped of its primary initiators, the fact that they stayed in control as long as they did says a lot about the fight of the players already in uniform. Boston had to carry even more responsibility inside. Mitchell's workload doubled, and Cunningham shifted into a larger facilitator role while still doing all the dirty work on defense. There were clear moments when that collective grind showed. Boston's inside presence kept Indiana steady through Washington's runs, carving out deep position and drawing defenders whether she got the shot or kicked it to teammates. Mitchell's driving lanes forced the Mystics to collapse, opening up space even when her own attempts didn't fall. Cunningham's steal and 3 was the exact type of play that jolted energy back into the team when things looked shaky, an emotional boost that doesn't show up in plus-minus but is impossible to miss. And Sims proved why she was added in the first place. Her ability to handle the ball and keep possessions alive kept Indiana from unraveling sooner. Those details are the difference between a team rolling over and one that keeps clawing late into the fourth. That's exactly why frustration runs so high. The roster didn't lack production. It got it from the names who were on the floor. It didn't lack fire. It had energy plays that kept building momentum. What it lacked were the adjustments to channel those efforts into a closing plan that could finish off a struggling Washington team. The numbers show the players gave enough to win. The film shows the fight was there too. And that sharp gap between what the roster delivered and how it was managed is at the heart of where things go next. Because once the press conference started, the divide between what players said and what the coach said became impossible to miss. Sophie Cunningham's post-game honesty stood in sharp contrast to Stephanie White's explanations. And that difference told you everything about where this team sits right now. Cunningham didn't dance around the issues. She said outright, "We've had hard injuries, but we have to get back to being dogs." That wasn't just a cliché. It was a blunt acknowledgement that opponents no longer fear the fever and are treating Indiana like a team to exploit. Cunningham's demand was clear. Find that edge again, reclaim the toughness, and stop allowing the same mistakes to pile up. I think the thing that we just have to continue to do that kind of got us on the run we had before the last couple of games was we were aggressive at the pony attack on defense, and that led to easy transition buckets. That led to everyone being aggressive and on their front foot on the offensive end. And, we have new players and that's okay, but we just have to adjust and we need them. But we've faced a lot of adversity. But we should be used to that by now, and I think they could just kind of outwork this a little bit, and that just can't be our excuse. Now stack that against White's words. The coach cited that the offense was getting stuck, returning to her now familiar point about possessions defaulting into Mitchell ISO plays. She also highlighted the fouling, noting Indiana committed 21 fouls that sent Washington to the line 26 times, including an incredible 14 free throws in the fourth quarter alone. White wasn't wrong to identify fouling as the major issue, but the problem lies in what wasn't addressed. You can never really control the outside things. You can't control injuries, and so that's why you really do have to control your mental, and control you can control. And I think that we have a really good group. We're still a tight-knit group. We're adding new players in that are amazing. I've been around the league for a long time, and I know you don't think so, but it's a blessing that you were on another team because we need you here. And so I just think it's an adjustment period. The highs and lows, you just have to stay kind of steady, right? Every team faces it. I feel like we faced it more than most this year, but I think this is going to set us up for something good. I don't know if it's this season, I don't know if it's next season, but I think there's always something that you can be grateful for and learn during those hard times. That's the core frustration. Identifying a problem is one thing, but taking responsibility for the in-game choices that could have changed it is another. Fans saw Cunningham demanding accountability and urgency in real terms, while White's breakdown stopped short of owning the adjustments that were within her control. Bibby's shooting could have changed spacing, loosening the paint so Mitchell didn't have to force shots into double teams. Expanding rotations might have protected players from fatigue that fed into poor defensive positioning. Instead, the players kept fighting through the snowball, while the coach explained after the fact how it got stuck. For fans, that dissonance hits hard. Watching players like Boston and Cunningham take accountability, then hearing the coach deflect responsibility into broad issues, sends the message that leadership is disconnected from the urgency of the group. Nobody expects perfection, especially with this roster missing so many guards, but the expectation is that everyone pulling the same rope means players and coaches alike owning their role in the collapse. Right now, the players are showing they're ready to carry the load, and the coach is giving explanations with little ownership. Well, the past couple of games it feels like kind of wear and tears, taking a toll. Not really, and I think that she kind of hit it. You have to give yourself a little bit of grace, when you have so many different lineups. See, and I have never played together. Hasn't played with a lot of people, maybe Tosh, but you have to know her style. She has to know our style, and so it's different, but that's part of being a pro. You gotta adjust and you gotta learn fast, and I think that's a really cool thing too, because when you click, and so that's scary for people coming in here and trying to play us. So where does this leave Indiana? That's where you come in. Should White be held accountable for these decisions? Was this more about coaching tactics, the injury crisis, or just a roster stretched too thin? Let us know in the comments whether you think this was a coaching problem, a roster issue, or simply a byproduct of bad luck in the moment. And the bigger question, should White be replaced or backed until the roster heals, should frame how the Fever respond in the coming weeks. Because this isn't about one bad night. It's about what happens if Indiana doesn't correct the split between effort and leadership. The longer that gap remains, the harder it will be to hold onto playoff positioning in a season where every misstep counts. If this loss to Washington wasn't just another stumble, it was a winnable 88-84 game that slipped away, dropping Indiana to 7th in the standings with the regular season running out. The players delivered. Boston with 20-9, Mitchell's 14-9, Cunningham's all-around grind with 8 points, 6 assists, and 3 steals, Howard's inside help, and Sims adding 11 off hardship. But the coaching decisions again defined the night, leaving key questions unanswered at the worst time. Cunningham summed it up best, saying the Fever have to get back to being dogs. That's the standard the players are setting, even as White points to fouls, stalled offense, and Clark's continued absence with no timetable for return. Now it's your turn. Why do you think the Fever lost? Do you think Stephanie White should keep coaching this group through the rest of the season? Let us know in the comments below.